And as I think the previous discussion suggested, we might have to take this even to the district level. It's a 2-year program where you would be working full-time with different agencies of the Government of India. In terms of eligibility criteria, applicants must be Indian citizens, must be less than 32 years of age, must hold at least a bachelor's degree. Now, the master's/advanced degrees, I think, would be helpful in that the more specialized you are in a certain discipline, the more you might be able to contribute to the ministry or agency that you're working with. But we would require a minimum of a bachelor's degree, as well as some work experience. The fellowship, in addition to the benefits of working in government and working with ministers, senior bureaucrats, and maybe even district level administration, would offer certain other benefits. So we don't envision this to be just a job. We envision this to be a fellowship program where you also go through a lot of other professional development activities. Now, we envision that fellows would be able to participate in leadership institutes over weekends and during the course of those 2 years, where they're able to work with other leaders, both from the private and the public sector, as well as non-profit sector, so that they can actually develop professionally as well during the course of these 2 years. And so this would mean that the fellowship is not limited to the work that you're doing in government, in the ministry, but you would also be going through a lot of professional management and leadership development. You would also become over time part of an alumni network of this fellows program, which I think would reap benefits for you professionally over the course of your career. And we would also create a global circle of mentors. Now, these mentors would be people who are accomplished leaders in their own fields, the private, public, non-profit, and the other sector. And they would provide you professional guidance and advice throughout. So this would become sort of another family for you. But in return for this privilege of participating in this fellows program, getting this level of professional development, we would expect that you go out there and then use the experience that you've gained in government and through these leadership professional development programs, and then apply that experience to whatever career you decide to pursue afterwards. The roles and responsibilities, as we've discussed, I mean, as Bharat was also saying in the previous panel, it's hard for you to go into government and say, here are going to be my defined roles and responsibilities. But to the extent that we can have an idea going in, we would have fellows be engaged in designing and implementing policy programs, managing, hopefully contributing to the implementation of several of these projects, drafting speeches if you're working with ministers who are frequently addressing audiences, preparing project reports, and the list can go on. And this slide, one of the things that we want to emphasize is that the fellows who do choose to take 2 years out of their professional careers and go into government should also have mentors and supervisors within the ministry or the agency that they're working in who serve as supervisors and mentors for them during their time there. And so we would structure it in a way where you would have individual development plans with your supervisors or your mentors in the ministry or the agency, and you would track your progress over time with them. And in the first few years of the program, we envision that GYIPS and other mentors and advisors that we have will work with the ministries and these mentors within the ministries to structure the program in a way that makes it meaningful for the fellows. Quickly on the post-fellowship opportunities, I think this also came up in the previous panel. There are multiple pathways that would be open to you afterwards. We do not necessarily see this as a way for you to get lateral entry into government. But if the ministry or the agency that you're working with does see that you sees the potential for you to stay on in whatever capacity, then that option would be open to you. But we envision that fellows would, after this fellowship, go on to the jobs either that they were previously in, or go to other jobs in the private sector, non-profit sector, etc. Or pursue further education, obviously. The program itself would be administered jointly by GYIPS, as well as the selection process would probably would be taken care of by an independent commission that would be composed of reputed leaders from the private, public, and non-profit sectors. I'll quickly end off with what the selection process would look like. Obviously, there will be an application process, which would consist not just of your academic and professional background, but also of essays and letters of recommendation. And you would have to be nominated by either your employer or the school, education institution that you are affiliated with at the time of application. Based on that nomination, then there would be an actual selection process that would be conducted by the independent commission that I was just talking about. And these finalists, as we would call them, would then be placed with certain agencies. And I can go into more details of this later. Finally, a quick couple of minutes on two fellowship programs that exist in the US right now. One is the White House Fellows Program. And actually, I should mention, we were supposed to have Mr. Anish Mahajan, who's a White House Fellow currently. We were supposed to have him join, but unfortunately, because of certain permissions that he had to get, he was not able to get them in time, so we weren't able to have him. But the White House Fellows Program, which he's a part of, started off in 1965. So it's been around for almost 45 years now. And the purpose was very similar to what we are envisioning here, was to give gifted, highly educated Americans the opportunity to work in government, to give them a chance to participate in the policy-making process, and give them a sense of involvement in the leadership of their society.
Could I make one point here? I think the word Mukpreet used in the previous session on experience is clearly reflected in here. If you see, this is about as much an experience of governance as to impact on it.
Exactly, yeah. So it's not just that you're seeking to have an impact, but that you're seeking to get the experience. So I won't go through too much of their details, but basically the fellowship is a very prestigious program. From my experience, and Lakshmi, you can also talk about this. I think you have experience with the program, or you've had people that you worked with.
There's a couple of folks who worked with me, including one very recently who's actually in the White House now, that we have actually recommended and who's gotten selected. It's a tremendous experience, just in terms of the exposure they get on policy issues, the exposure they get to things that are, frankly, extremely confidential, and they have the ability to see leaders in action and how they make decisions. And I think when I see people come out of the back end of a fellows program like this, they turn out to be remarkably, different people, and much more mature. They have a real sense of the softer side of, how do you make change happen, and I find that to be a very compelling thing. So I think this is an excellent program, the White House Fellows, although it's open for US citizens.
So this is the one-year program. The next program that we'll quickly mention is the Presidential Management Fellows Program, which is actually a two-year program. In the first, the White House Fellows Program, you're actually working with people, with agencies affiliated with the White House. In the PMF, two-year program where you can actually have rotations between different agencies and ministries in the US government. And that's the basic difference. And also here you have more recent graduates of graduate programs, whereas the White House Fellows, you come with a much longer work experience. So I think I'll stop there as far as the fellowship details are concerned. And I think we can move on.
Sure. I think what I'm going to do is, do you want to add anything to that, Ankit and Kazal, just in terms of the description of this?
I think broadly it's on the screen, but the point that we are not looking at limiting this to one part of the government, to not just the central government as you described earlier. Fellows can look at opportunities at the center, state, district level, within PSUs, within